It all started a few days before February 14th. Ava, my girlfriend of 3 years, had been acting off. At first it was subtle. Slower replies to my messages, shorter responses, a general distance that wasn't like her. Ava was the kind of person who texted back immediately, even if she was busy. She always made time for me, sending cute little check-ins throughout the day. "Did you eat yet?" Or, "Hope your day isn't too crazy." But then, the messages changed. They were cold, distant, sloppy. Ava never made typos. She was meticulous about that. She once told me she couldn't stand seeing misplaced commas or bad grammar, even in casual conversation, but suddenly her texts were full of them. At first I told myself she was just stressed. Work had been insane for her lately, and I figured maybe she was overwhelmed. But the more I tried to ignore it, the more my gut twisted. So I finally asked her about it. "Hey, are you okay? You seem different." Her response was almost immediate, as if she'd been waiting for me to notice. "I'm fine, babe. Just exhausted. Let's meet up on Valentine's Day, okay? I promise I'll make it up to you." She even added a heart emoji, and I wanted to believe her. I woke up feeling lighter. Whatever was going on with Ava, we'd fix it tonight. I went, all out, picked up flowers, grabbed her favorite dark chocolates, even made a reservation at Marcello's, this intimate little Italian place we both loved. Everything was set. Tonight would be perfect. Then I got the text. "I'm in the shower. Door's unlocked. Come in and wait for me. Love you." Something about it felt wrong. Ava never left her door unlocked, ever. She was paranoid about safety, triple-checking locks, keeping a security camera outside her apartment, even carrying pepper spray on her keychain. She never would have invited me in like that. My stomach tightened, but I told myself I was overthinking. Maybe she was just trying to be romantic. Maybe this was her way of apologizing for being distant. I pushed the thought aside and drove over. But the second I stepped inside, I knew something was very, very wrong. The air was heavy, thick, the kind of silence that isn't really silence, the kind that makes your skin prickle because you just know something is off. The only sound was the faint running water from the bathroom. "Ava?" I called out. No answer. I set the flowers down on the counter and took a few cautious steps in. That's when I noticed the dining table. A plate of food sat there untouched. A candle, completely melted down into a puddle of wax, had clearly been burning for hours. A shiver crawled up my spine. Something was wrong. I moved toward the bathroom, my hands suddenly clammy. The air was humid, thick with steam that curled under the door frame. I knocked softly. "Ava." No response. Then the water shut off. For a moment, all I could hear was my own breathing. The door creaked open, steam pouring out in dense waves, and then I saw him. A tall, gaunt man stood there, wearing Ava's dress. My mind couldn't process what I was seeing. His face, or rather the skin on his face, was stitched together, sagging in loose, unnatural folds. His lips were twisted into a grotesque smile, and his hair, Ava's dark curls, was glued in, uneven patches to his scalp. I stumbled back, my stomach lurching. "What the, who?" My words died in my throat. The man took a slow step forward. "What are you talking about, love?" he murmured, his voice sickly sweet. "It's me. It's Ava." My entire body locked up in terror. "Where is she?" My voice was barely a whisper. His smile widened. "I told you, babe. Right here." I bolted for the door, but he was too fast. His long fingers wrapped around my wrist, nails digging in, piercing my skin. "You're scared," he whispered, tilting his head. "That's okay. Love is scary sometimes." I yanked away, stumbling backward, desperate for an escape. But then I heard it. A wet, dragging sound from the hallway. My entire body went rigid. The bedroom door, which had been closed before, was slightly open now. Something moved inside. I didn't want to look, but I had to. I pushed the door open, and the smell hit me first. Rotting flesh, thick, putrid, clinging to my throat. And then I saw her. Ava, or what was left of her. She was propped up against the bed, dressed in the outfit she'd planned to wear that night. Her head tilted at an impossible angle, her lips parted like she was about to speak. Her skin, God, her skin was gone in places, peeled away in gruesome strips. I choked on a scream. I used to love Valentine's Day. The flowers, the fancy dinners, the little surprises. It always felt like something worth celebrating, something special, something magical. But over the years, it started to lose its spark. Maybe it was the way restaurants hiked up their prices, or how every couple seemed to be performing their love for social media. The stress of booking the perfect table, picking the perfect gift, making sure the night lived up to impossible expectations, it just became exhausting. So last year, Matt and I decided to do something different. No overpriced dinners, no scrambling for last-minute reservations. Instead, we booked a week-long getaway at a bed and breakfast in Vermont. A quiet, cozy retreat surrounded by snow-covered forests. No emails, no traffic, no distractions. Just us. I remember the drive up, miles of winding roads, trees thick with snow, the sky turning that deep blue-gray of an early winter evening. The further we got from the city, the quieter it became. That heavy, all-consuming kind of quiet you only find in places untouched by streetlights or passing cars. By the time we arrived, the sun had almost disappeared behind the trees. The place was even more beautiful than the photos had made it look. A sprawling wooden lodge, warm lights glowing from the windows, the smell of burning firewood drifting through the crisp air. A handful of cabins were scattered throughout the property, each one tucked among the trees for privacy. It felt secluded in the best way possible. Even the innkeeper greeted us with that soft, knowing warmth that made it seem like she had been running the place forever. "Welcome, lovebirds," she said, handing us a handwritten itinerary. "We've got plenty of activities planned this week. Wine tasting, sleigh rides, a big candlelit dinner on the 14th. She winked. "But if you two just want to hibernate in your cabin, that's perfectly fine too." Our cabin was perfect. Rustic, but not in a roughing-it way. Thick blankets on the bed, a fireplace in the corner, and even a private hot tub on the deck. Through the window, I could see the woods stretching out in every direction, untouched snow covering the ground in a perfect undisturbed layer. I remember standing there, staring at it, feeling strangely small. That first night, we had dinner in the lodge with the other couples. The atmosphere was warm, intimate. Low candlelight, the scent of cinnamon and roasted meat filling the air. Most of the other guests were friendly, a mix of newlyweds, longtime partners, and people like us, dating long enough to have inside jokes, but not long enough to have stopped trying. And then there was them, Danielle and Sophie. The moment I saw Sophie, my stomach twisted. She looked like me, not identical, but close enough to make me do a double take. Dark hair, sharp cheekbones, even the same way she absent-mindedly tucked a strand of hair behind her ear when she laughed. Daniel noticed too. "This is crazy," he said, flashing an easy grin. "You two could be sisters." Sophie smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. I laughed it off, made some joke about needing to check my family tree, but the whole interaction left me uneasy. Over the next few days, they kept appearing, at breakfast, during the afternoon walk through the woods, at the bonfire event, and every time it was Daniel who started the conversation. "You remind me of someone," he said one evening, swirling his mulled wine. I didn't ask who. By February 13th, I started avoiding them. I told Matt I wasn't feeling great, skipped the group activities. He didn't seem to notice how Daniel's gaze lingered on me or how Sophie barely spoke at all. That night, I woke up to use the bathroom. The room was dark except for the glow of dying embers in the fireplace. I padded across the wooden floor, still half asleep. But as I passed the window, something made me stop. There was a figure standing at the edge of the trees, not moving, just watching. My breath caught in my throat. My mind scrambled for explanations. Maybe it was Matt. Maybe someone had wandered outside for some fresh air. But deep down, I knew neither of those things were true. The figure just stood there, a dark shape against the pale snow. And then slowly, it stepped backward into the woods. I didn't wake Matt. I don't know why. Maybe because saying it out loud would make it real. Maybe because I didn't want him to tell me I was imagining things. The next morning, Daniel and Sophie were gone. Evelyn, the innkeeper, mentioned it casually at breakfast. They checked out early, she said with a shrug. No explanation, no goodbye.
That night, Valentine's Day, we had dinner in the lodge. The room was filled with candlelight, the soft hum of conversation, the occasional clinking of wine glasses. It should have felt warm, but something was wrong. The spot where Daniel and Sophie usually sat was empty. It shouldn't have mattered, but it did. The whole room felt off balance, like something had been removed from it. I couldn't shake the feeling, the unease that had been creeping up on me all week, finally reaching its peak. So, I asked Evelyn, how long had they been staying here? She frowned. Who? I hesitated. Daniel and Sophie, the couple that left this morning. She gave me a confused look, shaking her head. There was no couple by that name. I felt my stomach drop. But we had dinner with them, we talked to them. They were in cabin 6. Her expression didn't change. Cabin 6 has been empty all week. A cold wave washed over me. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning we packed up and left before breakfast. Neither of us spoke much during the drive. I kept looking out the window, expecting to see something, someone watching us from the trees. I never found out who Daniel and Sophie really were, or why I saw someone standing in the woods that night. But every Valentine's Day since, I wake up at exactly 2 a.m., and for just a second, I swear I see a shadow outside my window. Breakups are weird. Everyone talks about the immediate pain, the heartbreak, the tears, the gut-wrenching realization that someone you loved is just gone. But no one really warns you about the slow, dragging aftershock, the small things, the empty Sunday, mornings when there's no one to split coffee with, the cold side of the bed that stays cold, the inside jokes that don't make sense anymore because half of the joke walked out the door. It had been a few months, but I was still dealing with the fallout. She kept the apartment. I found a new place. She kept the friend group. I quietly left the group chats. Fair, probably, but fair doesn't make it hurt less. So like any other lonely idiot trying to get back out there, I did what I swore I wouldn't do. I downloaded a dating app. Now, I didn't expect much. If you've ever used those apps, you know what I mean. It's like fishing in a lake where half the fish are scammers and the other half are people who either never respond or give you one-word answers until you give up. I swiped through people I had nothing in common with, ignored the weirdly aggressive "Ibios, if you're under 6 feet, don't even try," and dodged the bots trying to convince me to sign up for some sketchy website. But then there was Leah. She was different, or at least she seemed different. Her messages had personality, actual conversation, not just a string of emojis or a dry wide. She was funny, witty, and best of all, she lived nearby. We spent a few days messaging back and forth, mostly swapping stories about awful Valentine's Day experiences. Hers involved an ex who proposed after 3 months of dating. Mine involved accidentally sending flowers to my boss instead of my girlfriend. Long story. It felt easy, comfortable, like talking to someone I already knew. Then, the day before Valentine's, she suggested we meet up for a drink. "Let's do it before the big day," she said. "No pressure, no expectations." I liked that. No need for over-the-top romance, just two people looking for a little company. I agreed. We picked a bar near my place, and that was that. Or at least, I thought it was. The night of our meetup, I was running a little late. Nothing serious, just the usual pre-date routine, staring at my reflection for too long, wondering if my jacket made me look like I was trying too hard, and debating whether 2 drinks for confidence was 1 too many. When I finally stepped outside, the cold air hit me like a slap. It was that deep kind of winter chill, the kind that makes your breath fog up in front of you and sinks into your bones, no matter how many layers you're wearing. The streets were quieter than I expected. A few couples strolled by, bundled up and lost in their own little worlds. It was one of those nights where the city just felt different, like something was missing. I pulled out my phone and shot Leah a quick text. "On my way. You there?" Her reply came almost instantly. "Hey, yeah, I'm here, but it's crazy packed. Some group's having a birthday party, and it's way too loud. I ducked into a quieter spot nearby. I'll send you the location." Made sense. When I got closer to the bar, I could see what she meant. People were practically spilling out onto the sidewalk, laughter and cigarette smoke filling the air. The kind of place where you had to shout to be heard. I wouldn't want to wait in there either. Then my phone buzzed again, a restaurant's name and an address. "They're holding a table for us, but hurry, it's getting busy too." I stopped walking. We never talked about dinner. Something about that small detail made my stomach twist. It wasn't that weird, right? Maybe she changed her mind last minute. Maybe she just got hungry, but something didn't sit right. I tapped the address to check the route. The quickest way there was through an old side street, one of those narrow alleys where the streetlights barely work, and the buildings feel like they're pressing in on you. The other route was 10 minutes longer but stayed on the main roads. I wasn't an idiot. I took the long way. As I walked, I messaged back, "Might take a bit longer, not walking through the alley." Her reply came instantly, "Too fast. Come on, it's fine. Just be quick." I frowned. The casual, playful tone from earlier was gone. Then, another message. "Please, I don't want to sit here alone." I slowed down. The street was empty. Too empty. The kind of empty that makes you hyper-aware of every sound. My own footsteps, the rustle of dry leaves, the distant hum of traffic blocks away. Then another message. "Where are you?" My pulse stuttered. I wasn't even close to the restaurant yet. How did she know I wasn't moving? I didn't reply. My brain screamed at me to turn around, go home, forget the whole thing. But instead, I walked faster. My heart was hammering now, breath coming shorter with every step. The closer I got, the worse the feeling grew, like I was walking into something I couldn't see. Finally, I reached the restaurant, small, dimly lit, almost too quiet. I stepped inside, exhaling in relief. It was nearly empty. I shot off a quick text. "Here, where are you?" Nothing. The same person who had been spamming my phone minutes ago had suddenly gone completely silent. A waiter passed by and I asked, "Hey, did a girl come in? About my height, dark hair?" He frowned, shaking his head. "No, it's been slow all night." My stomach twisted. No Leah, no busy crowd, no table being held. I checked my phone one last time, staring at the messages. They were still there, but they felt wrong, like something was off about them in a way I couldn't explain. I didn't wait around to figure it out. I booked an Uber and kept my back to the wall until the car pulled up. Even when I got home, I couldn't shake the feeling like I wasn't alone. The next morning, I opened the app. Leah's profile was gone, like she'd never existed at all. I deleted the app and stayed in that night. Valentine's Day has always been a big deal for Rachel. She's the type who starts planning a whole month in advance, Reservations, little gifts, handwritten notes, all of it. And honestly, I love that about her. But me? I've always been more of a last-minute grab some flowers on the way home kind of guy. Not because I don't care, but because I've never been great at all the planning and romantic gestures. But this year, I wanted to do it right. No scrambling, no half-hearted efforts. I had a plan. I worked as a delivery driver for a catering company in Philly, and that particular Valentine's Day, my shift ended at 3 p.m. That was perfect. It gave me plenty of time to pick up a reservation-only cake from this boutique. Bakery Rachel loved. Grab the roses I had actually pre-ordered for once, and get home early to set everything up for a perfect evening. At least, that was the plan. I rolled into the parking lot of the catering warehouse at 7 a.m., already feeling exhausted. I hadn't gotten much sleep the night before, stayed up too late wrapping Rachel's gift. It was nothing too extravagant, just a delicate gold necklace with a tiny heart charm. Simple but meaningful. I knew she'd love it, but as soon as I got to work, something felt off. The place was eerily quiet. The usual morning bustle, the clattering of carts, the beeping of trucks backing up, the chatter of my co-workers was completely missing. The big metal doors on the loading dock were shut. Normally they were open, with workers moving in and out, loading up deliveries, but not today. And my boss's car, gone. That was weird. Mr. Calloway was always here before anyone else. The guy was a drill sergeant when it came to punctuality. If you were even 5 minutes late, you'd get an earful. But today, the parking lot was nearly empty. I pulled out my phone and checked the time, 7:05 a.m. Maybe I was just early. I leaned back in my seat and scrolled mindlessly for a few minutes, but something kept nagging at me. By 7:15, when no one else had shown up, I started to feel uneasy. I tried calling Calloway, no answer. I called a couple of co-workers, nothing. Then, my phone buzzed. A text from Rob, one of the other drivers. "Dude, have you heard?" I frowned. Heard what? There was a long pause before he finally responded, "Calloway's dead." I sat up so fast I nearly dropped my phone. "What? How?" Another pause. Then, "I don't know the details. Cops found him at his house this morning. It's bad, man." I just stared at the screen, my stomach twisting into a tight knot. Mr. Calloway. Dead. I mean, I wasn't close to him, but I had worked for the guy for 3 years. He was strict, sure, borderline obsessive about time management, but he wasn't a bad person. He had a no-nonsense kind of attitude, but he ran the company well. The idea that he was gone just didn't seem real. I called Rob immediately. He picked up on the second ring. "Are you serious?" I asked. "Yeah, man. The cops are everywhere. His whole street is blocked off." I swallowed hard. "What happened? Was it like an accident or something?" Rob exhaled sharply. "I don't think. So I heard something about a break-in." A break-in? That made my skin crawl. I glanced out the window, suddenly hyper-aware of how quiet everything was. "I was about to drive over there," Rob said. "You want to come?" I hesitated. I wasn't sure if I wanted to see whatever was waiting at Calloway's place, but at the same time, I couldn't just sit here pretending like nothing had happened. "Yeah," I said. "I'll come." 15 minutes later, I was in Rob's car, watching the city blur past. Neither of us talked much. The radio was on low, but it might as well have been static. When we turned onto Calloway's street, we saw the flashing lights immediately. Police cars were parked haphazardly along the curb, yellow crime scene tape stretched across the property, keeping onlookers at bay. A few neighbors stood outside in clusters, murmuring to each other. Rob pulled over and we got out. Calloway's house was small and unassuming, single-story, white siding, an old porch swing hanging lopsided from the front. Just a normal house, except for the open front door. Cops were moving in and out, their radios crackling. And from the murmurs around us, I picked up bits and pieces, enough to paint a picture I really didn't want to see. Calloway had been tied to a chair, beaten, tortured, left like that all night. I felt a cold chill creep up my spine. Why? I muttered, more to myself than anyone else. Who the hell would do something like that? Rob just shook his head, his jaw tight, his hands stuffed in his hoodie pockets. Over the next few days, the full story came out, and with every detail, it got worse. It was a couple, a man and a woman. They broke into Calloway's house the night before Valentine's Day, convinced he had some kind of money stash hidden away. He didn't, but they didn't believe him. So they kept going for hours, and the most messed up part, they did it for Valentine's Day. They needed money for a fancy dinner, a hotel, some jewelry. That's what it came down to. Calloway suffered, died, because two people wanted to have a luxury Valentine's night. The cops caught them within 24 hours. They weren't exactly criminal masterminds. They got arrested at a cheap motel, drinking champagne and eating chocolate-covered strawberries. And guess what they used to pay for it? Calloway's credit card. I couldn't wrap my head around it. The sheer stupidity, the cruelty, the absolute waste of it all. Valentine's Day was supposed to be about love, about appreciating the people who matter. But for Calloway, it had become the worst night of his life, and his last. That night, I went to Rachel's place. I sat her down and told her everything. She listened quietly, her fingers laced through mine, eyes wide. When I finished, she squeezed my hand. "Do you still want to go out tonight?" she asked softly. I thought about it, about everything, about how fast life could flip upside down. After a long moment, I shook my head. "Let's just stay in," I said. Because for the first time, I really understood how fast things could change, how love, the thing we celebrate with roses and chocolates, could be twisted into something dark, and how a single night, one that was supposed to be filled with warmth and joy, could leave scars that never really heal.